I'm on. Hi all. This is Val at Better Believe, hypnotherapist. For those of you that have been following me a little bit more closely or that know me a little bit better, you'll know by now that I've been running a hypnotherapy practice for over a year, which I'm now pausing for a bit because I've been offered an opportunity that I couldn't refuse. However, I would like to keep talking in different platforms about all of the topics that I'm very passionate about. So how our feelings work, why we feel in certain ways, the stories that we tell ourselves in our mind, and how weird our brain is. Well, maybe it's not weird, I don't know. So there's one topic in particular that I really want to address because it's really close to my heart and it's affected my human experience very heavily ever since being a very young Val, and the pressure and the desire and the need to get all of that off my chest has led me to do this video now with this hair, and probably not with a perfect light and probably not with a perfect plan of what I'm going to say, but the need to get this out is much more important than doing any perfect video. This is my first YouTube video on this channel, so hopefully there'll be more. But I hope you will enjoy the content. Enjoy the content, and if you see that I turn up with different hair and different clothes, is because I had to split this over a number of days. So please just ignore the continuity errors and try to focus on what I'm sharing. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. So some of you may know that earlier in the year, I was invited as a guest to Loretta Bruning's Happy Brain podcast. Loretta Bruning is the founder of the Inner Mammal Institute, and she has been my main source of knowledge in terms of understanding why we don't feel great all the time, and when we feel bad, what's the particular chemical in the brain that makes us feel bad and why it makes us feel bad. The plan for that podcast was for us to speak about codependency, and then, as it often happens, we got carried away chatting about things that we are passionate about that didn't particularly touch on the topic of codependency. So I now have a full draft of things that I would have wanted to say about codependency during that podcast that I didn't get a chance to say, and I really want to say them now. So because I'm not a YouTube video maker expert, I am not going to pretend that I know those points by heart. I've still got my list on a piece of paper, old school, that I'm probably going to have to go and resort to. So if I stop this and start again after a few seconds, that's why. It's because I'm reading. Codependency isn't featured as a condition in the Statistical and Diagnostics Manual. However, it does have a quite specific set of traits that are recognizable in the people that are codependent. I am sure that all of the people that are codependent have had a different experience of codependency that came about in different ways, and I am sure that there are many ways to tell a story of codependency, but this is mine. So the definition of codependency for me, the way that I've experienced it, is the conviction or state of mind that made me feel that the only way that I could exist in a relationship or friendship was by always prioritizing the other person and making sure that their needs were met and problem solved. And specifically, I was the one person that was responsible for solving their problems. My needs were not important in light of that, or even more so, for a very long time, I did not realize that my needs existed in the first place. There's a very interesting thing that we say in my branch of hypnotherapy when we realize that the client that we may be seeing didn't have some of the very critical children's needs met when they were young. And normally people respond in one of two ways. They either give that need up, so they start hiding it, suppressing it, pretending they don't have it, or once they go out and start interacting with people that are not their caregivers or their parents, they give that need away, which means, okay, these needs were met for me in my childhood by my parents or caregiver, so you friend, you boyfriend, you person close to me, meet those needs now. And I'm buttoning in my own video now just to say that in my case, I definitely gave the need up. So I deluded myself that whilst that need of mine for safety or for feeling celebrated, feeling significant, may not have been met by my parents or by my family, that was fine because I didn't need that. So backtracking to my childhood, and I want to make a disclaimer here. I am not throwing a pity party. I don't have any intention to do a display of martyrdom, and I don't think that my inner child particularly had it worse than any other inner child. However, I feel like I have to relay some of the facts about my childhood for you to be able to understand analytically how the codependency came about. So I'll try to be brief. I was born in northeastern Italy to parents that were old enough to be my grandparents. So the generational gap was really, really big. Both my parents had their own ways of being codependent in the way that the family had relative importance to them compared to the importance of their role in the outside society. The main example of this is my dad's main concern was the well-being of the local community, and he was involved in leading every single group of this, starting from the local football team to go into the local association that gathered money and ran the village events, into being very involved with the church, into being very involved with the cooperative association of the local farmers, to local politics, to local schools. He was a teacher who was very involved in the regional politics as well, and he lived for that. Any other thing that was about the family came afterwards if there was time. For most of my childhood, I only saw my dad when he came back for a meal, and for that limited time, all of the attention was making sure that we would not exacerbate the frustrations that he was already experiencing outside of the house. So the message was very clear, both for me and my sister, who's 10 years older than me. When dad comes back, the telly's going to be on, the news is going to be raging, and he's going to shout at the news in anger because he's got all of his frustration that he has to express somehow about everything that happened outside of the house that isn't making him happy. And therefore, as children, we can't make a whisper. It's all about making sure that we don't make him even angrier than he already is. And the things that could make him even more angry than he already is are very unpredictable. They may range by something having not gone perfectly at school for either of us to us knocking a piece of cutlery on the floor. And that would cause extreme reactions. Dad was born in the 40s, and like many men of that generation, he had huge struggles controlling his temper. Just to give you an idea of how little it would have been involved in my upbringing, I can't speak for my sister. She was born 10 years before me. The day that I was born, he was organizing the layout of the posters for the local fair, whilst my mum was in the hospital giving birth to me. My mum, on her hand, she had her own space and her own realm of being very involved in the community in a smaller way. Obviously, she was his shadow in everything that he was already doing, leading and coordinating in all of the different environments that I listed before. And also she had her own side hustle that mainly consisted in providing free services for the lonely people of the village. Mainly people that were lonely because they were old, so nest had flown out, and they were either unmarried or widowers, and they needed help organizing their hospital rounds, medicines, etc. My mum did that for decades, completely for free. When it came to us, we were expected to follow the same kind of ethical structure, if you wish. So the value was definitely that you should sacrifice yourself for the outer community. So from a very early age, both me and my sister were very, very intensely involved in all of the activities that were happening in the village, which are the same as before. So church, school, local sports, and I'm not talking performing in the sports, I'm talking running the activities around the sports, running the bar, helping to maintain the football pitches, washing the footballer suits, all of that kind of stuff, completely for free. It was a duty. One of my mum's main or favorite sayings was, in life, you can't just go to school and then have fun. You've got to make sure that you've got some sort of collective commitment. So it was very clear to us that our needs came last because all of these forms of help were expected. It's not as if we could duck out of them if we didn't feel like that day. We had to do that. Obviously, if any members of the community were in the house, they came first. So nothing, no noise, no fly should fly if anybody's in the house. No needs should be expressed. So it was very easy for both me and my sister to get to the point where we realized that the need for being prioritized as a child was never going to come about, and therefore, the sooner we gave that need up, the better. Little did we know that would come back to bite our ass big time later on. So our job to placate our dad and keeping our mum safe as well, because when my dad had really aggressive outbursts of rage, he would become physically violent with her. And when we were children, there were times where we felt responsible for protecting her. So instead of her feeling responsible for protecting us from his outbursts, it was the other way around. So when he had one of those and he started, moving his hands in different ways, she'd lock herself in the bathroom and we'd be outside dealing with him. Or if she was still outside with us, we'd be the one in between him and her, which is bizarre considering that we're talking ages, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13. Moving on in life, I started applying this to my friendship. And why was that? It was because when as a child, the only time that you get a feeling of importance, so as children, as a child, you really need your parents' approval. And where that only comes if you have been dutiful in your school commitments, and then when you've absolutely bended backwards for the community, obviously it becomes natural to start adopting this as a regular behavior because it's the only way that you think that anybody's ever going to love you. So the subconscious thought is, I can only be loved and accepted by the people around me if I am of service. If I do everything perfect and if I am of service to this person, then this person's going to love me. If I'm not of service to this person, then this person's not going to give a shit about me. So that was easily applied to my friendships. And I would say this came about more so in my later teenage years. So let's say from 15 to 18. And the reason why that's a bit dangerous is that when you apply that to a close relationship or friendship, and most of this happened for me when I was in school, the feeling that you get from this really tight, almost morbid relationship, friendship with this person is a feeling of trust. And the feeling of trust sparks one of the brain chemicals that are one of the main drivers of any actions that we take as humans, which is oxytocin. Oxytocin has a role, and the job of oxytocin is to create the good feeling of trust to make sure that as humans we cooperate. But as any tools or devices or things that get offered to as humans as a gift to use for a certain purpose, it can be misused. So obviously, in a situation when one is codependent and they feel like that relationship or friendship with this person or group of people depends on your ability to be of service to these people, oxytocin runs like crazy because there is a really strong feeling of trust between you and this person or group of people. And what also gets dangerous, it's a misuse of oxytocin. And what also gets, well, I'm not going to say dangerous, I'm going to say problematic, is that when you realize that a lot of people rely on your help to be able to get on in their day-to-day life, be this advice, be this practical help, you start to get a fairly big feeling of importance. So the codependency with the person or group of people starts becoming the reason why you wake up in the morning. Like, you can't wait to go to school, or you can't wait to go to whatever place that is the meeting place with these people, because you know that, well, we don't know, but your brain has gotten used to the fact that as soon as you do a favor or you resolve someone's problem or you make that day easier for that person, the oxytocin is going to start to run. You're going to like that because it's a good feeling and you get addicted to it. You start feeling very important. Feeling important for someone else because you are the only person that they can rely on to express themselves, ask for advice, again, ask for practical help, makes you feel powerful, and that is addictive. It's a very addictive feeling. So just to give some examples, in this realm, which was the one of school, which is just one example, for a bunch of people, I was the one that was in the friendship because I was always the one that went and got food for everybody, or I was the one that did other people's homework. I got to the end of high school where I was writing my own dissertation for what we would consider the A-levels, and it was a big job, and I ended up writing it for 2 more people, and I still came out with top marks because that was my family expectation. So it was pretty crazy. I basically wrote 2 other people's A-level dissertation as well as mine, thinking that it was my job. Like, literally thinking that it was my job. And then you get to the point where, as well as this becoming problematic for you, well, specifically for me, it also becomes problematic for the other person because they start expecting these services, this issue resolution, this availability, this tendency for me to always put myself last so that I could put them first. And in that way, I really disempowered people. I really disempowered people because the type of help I was providing, the type of help I was offering was allowing the other person or group of people to perpetuate those patterns of helplessness, irresponsibility, and sometimes abuse. And this definitely happened in school because in school, if I had a bad day or if I did something that for any reason went off the mark in the opinion of these people, I was treated really badly. Like, people would stop talking to me, they would get very angry at me, they would start judging. So they had gotten so used to me being responsible for all their needs that the second I wasn't too okay and I had to prioritize myself, that became a problem. And that also happened in my romantic relationships. And like any respectable codependent, what I did when stuff like that happened was to justify these people's behavior by letting them walk all over me. Like, not even try to defend myself and say, listen, that's enough now. I need some balance in this. I have feelings too. I have needs too. Sometimes you're going to have to understand that I need to prioritize those. I was unable to say any of that because I was scared that I would lose the relationship. And that's when I started realizing that codependency, whilst it gives you the illusion of being a very morally superior person because, oh, look what I do for everybody else, is actually one of the most selfish things that exist. And now, many people are not going to like hearing this. Many people that like thinking of themselves as selfless, that like thinking of themselves as people that can take anything and that have a big heart, and that heart allows them to put everybody else first and they come last because it doesn't matter, because they're stronger, they can take that. I'm sorry, guys, feel free to disagree with me, but you are fooling yourself. Codependency is nothing to do with the other person that you are helping. It's all to do with you, or in my case, it was just to do with me, and with the fact that this pattern that I had internalized as a little child of thinking that the only way I can exist in a relationship with my parent, with my caregiver, with my friends, or with my boyfriend is for me to give all my needs away and to just look after their needs. It's a survival strategy. So you do it for yourself. I was codependent because it worked for me. I liked the oxytocin. I liked the feeling of importance. I liked the fact that people trusted me, and I liked the fact that they needed me. And the only reason why I know this now is not just because I've learned about the happy chemicals in the brain, why they're there and how they should work, but it's also because in the middle of the codependency, I realized something very clear. And this is that anytime somebody that was close to me had a problem and managed to resolve it without my help, the feeling that that gave me was not a good feeling. So I started wondering, if the person that I love so much, or that I should care about so much because we're so close and there's so much trust, had a problem and now they don't have a problem anymore, how come that I'm still unhappy? And it was really difficult for me to admit that the thing that gave me happiness wasn't the fact that they resolved their problem or that they were now feeling better. It was the fact that I had had a role in the resolution of that problem or in the fact that they were feeling better. if the resolution or the bettering of the situation came because of someone else or something else, I wasn't happy. So that was key for me to understand that actually what I was doing with the codependency wasn't selfless at all. I was doing it for me. It gave me purpose, it gave me importance, it gave me power. Sadly, between understanding something logically and then changing a pattern that you've built during a very young age, there is a lot of work to do. And sometimes there is a lot of pain to go through. Because the only way that I could finally get over the codependency was to experience enough painful relationships that I then had to get to the point that I had to say, never again. In other words, the pain of the abuse that came as a result of the codependency outweighed the good feeling of the oxytocin coming from the feeling of importance, from the feeling of power, from the purpose so much that I had no choice but to leave codependency behind. Pain, by the way, is the biggest driver of any human action. So one thing that your mind will always do is to take you away from pain and towards pleasure. But the urge to get away from pain is much bigger than the urge to go towards pleasure, because it's to do with survival needs. So I won't get into that this time around. So this is how we get into the most painful codependent relationships that I had, most of which were with my ex-boyfriend, starting from the very first one that I had during my school years, going then into the years just after I had moved to England, which was the last relationship that then made me go, okay, this is enough now. I want to make a point about moral superiority as well, before I get into the details about the romantic relationships. As we said, oxytocin plays a big part in making us feel good when we create bonds of trust with people, because cooperation is necessary for survival. But something else, which is kind of the opposite of oxytocin, and it has to balance out with oxytocin, is serotonin. And serotonin sparks when you achieve something, or something happens that makes you feel like your status as a human has leveled up. So it's called the so-called one-up position. So if you win a competition, that may spark serotonin. If you get a job that you really want, that may spark serotonin. And also, in a bit of a twisted way, when you have that sense of power that these people can't do anything without you because obviously they need so much help from you, you get a sense of moral superiority. So as well as the oxytocin, you get the serotonin as well. So pretty problematic cocktail to have. Okay, so in my romantic relationships, how did I slowly but surely start coming out of the codependency? It was because I realized that all of this help and selflessness and availability and flexibility and love and care and whatever other form the codependency may take followed a law of diminishing returns. In other words, people started taking everything I did for them for granted. And now I'm talking specifically about my boyfriends. So for example, if at the beginning of a relationship, all of my efforts to make sure that this person's needs are met were met with a lot of validation, acknowledgement, a lot of praise. Oh, you're amazing. I don't know where I would be without you. I've never met someone as amazing as you. All of that started being drip fed less and less from these people, which is a classical manipulation tactic. And sadly, it is believed that people with codependent traits tend to attract people with abusive traits that take advantage of the codependent person. So yeah, diminishing returns. So all of this showers of praise and all of this validation that used to come at the beginning started to become less and less in a quite twisted and sad managing down expectations mechanism. Also, what this allowed me to do during the romantic relationships is that they finally made me aware of my boundaries. And I am not kidding you when I'm telling you that before then, I had no idea what my boundaries were. I didn't even realize that I had any. I didn't know that boundaries were a thing. I didn't know that saying no because this doesn't work for me was a thing. But, given the history in the formative years, how could I, So an experience needs to be painful enough to change what you learned when you were very young. And until my boundaries were severely tramped on, I did not realize I had any. And one of the examples that I realized that those boundaries were being severely tramped on was, I'll give you very specific examples because it's easier. I was going to my boyfriend's house one night, and we're talking about 10 years ago. And we are meant to be at his house for the night, so we'll have a meal together. We haven't quite established how that's going to happen. We may order in, we may cook together, and then we were going to watch Game of Thrones, have a chilled evening in. I had a fairly stressful job at the time, so I was really looking forward to that. I get to his house to realize that he's not there. And it's raining, so he's not there. I don't have a key, so he's essentially left me out in the rain. When I call him to ask where he is, because, we had planned to meet at this time at his house, he tells me that he's at the pub with his boss, and then that I should bring whoever housemate to get the key, and then I should go in and make dinner whilst he has another round in the pub. And when I heard that, I was like, I am so not gonna do this. Like, this doesn't take it, this disrespects so many of my values. First of all, I don't think that men and women are the same, but in today's world, I really think there is some equality to be respected. So we both come from a very intense day at work. I'm not the kind of woman that is staying home at your house making you dinner whilst you're at the pub drinking. This is just not happening. Second of all, you have not respected that commitment that you had with me to meet me in this place at this time. And third of all, the lack of consideration about the fact that the door is locked, you're not quite sure that someone's home and it's raining, and not even that makes you think that maybe you should make your way back and respect your commitment. I completely lost my shit. I lost my shit. And that was one of those other points when I realized I am not selfless. I have basic needs. I came here tonight because I needed a quiet evening in with my partner. I needed to be able to share the cooking with this person, and I needed some affection and some physical proximity. I didn't need to come here to make dinner for somebody who's in the pub with his mates drinking the last round. And that's when I started backing off and say, okay, I'm gonna need some sort of minimal respect in this relationship. That sadly didn't resolve things for me as quickly as I thought, because the guy didn't change his ways at all. And we got to the point, and I'm not blaming anyone. I admitted earlier, this is completely my responsibility. It's not my fault, because by the time the codependency had become one of my leading patterns, there was not a lot I could do about it quickly because it was ingrained in my brain. I learned it as a child. But I'm not blaming anybody else. It's something that I allowed people to do to me because of the codependency. Because initially I had a trade-off with the codependency that then went away. And it was difficult to find a balance whilst moving out of that pattern. So things exacerbated when this guy decided to get a passport for the first time in his life, something that he had never got. He had never left the country. As you know, I'm an expat, and also for people that know me, they know that I like being abroad several times a year. So when I was in a relationship with this guy, it was quite limiting for me because he wouldn't go anywhere. So at the time when he finally resolved to get a passport, I was so happy that I paid for his passport. Like, think about how crazy this is. It's not that this guy couldn't afford a passport. It's just we had gotten into the baseline that any big expense was on me. Literally, I was paying for everything. Holidays, meals out, any extra activities that we were doing. I was driving him everywhere. I was paying for everything. And I also paid for his passport. Hoping that the first thing that would happen after he got his passport was that we would organize a holiday together abroad as a couple. What happened instead was that as soon as he got his passport paid by me, he went and organized an Eastern European bash with a bunch of his lad friends. And that also made me lose my shit. And that also made me realize I am not selfless. I do have expectations. I am human. And it's about time for me to get some balance and to be in relationships, friendships, any kind of social interactions that can give me back at least as much as I am able to give out. So slowly but surely, it's been 10 years now, I've been able to admit that I have needs, I have expectations. It's not my job to solve everybody's problems and to make everybody feel better all the time. And I'm okay with it. And I could only embark in a profession as a therapist by being very aware of that boundary. Because the last thing I want to do is to go out and help people just so that I get that buzz of, oh, I'm so important because I helped this person. I want to help people because I want to have a positive impact and because that's good for them, not for me. Obviously, on reflection, it's good for me as well because it helps my profession. But at least it doesn't give me that trade-off of oxytocin that I cannot live without, or I could not live without. So it was very, very important to me. Codependency and therapy they're not a good combination. So today I can sit here and state that I'm very proud of myself. Obviously, sometimes there's still work to do. I grew up in a family where everybody was codependent, and they still are. And a lot of the time I have to interact with my family. So there's a lot of balancing out and a lot of accurately handling people that have different experiences and do things for different reasons. But apart from that, I am very happy to say that I have found my balance, and the relationships that I have in my life now are not codependent. They're not there because I need to get my buzz of oxytocin, feeling of importance and moral superiority by helping others. It's because I genuinely like these people and they like me. And whenever we do something together, there is balance, and I love it. So the post-experience realizations about codependency for me are these ones. I've gone through a few of them already, so please forgive the repetition, but the mind learns by repetition. So sometimes it's very important to repeat as well. Codependency gives the illusion of selflessness and altruism, when it's actually really selfish. And it's selfish because it gives you a feeling of importance through the oxytocin. It gives you a sense of self-worth. It makes you feel very powerful because people need you, whether these are friends, partners, family members, or community. So you become codependent because you have a validation or a trade-off. When you are in a very problematic relationship with somebody that has a difficult character or is even abusive, codependency almost makes you proud of the fact that you are the only person that can support that person or anybody else with all their problems, because you are the only person that they trust. That makes you so proud. All of this sacrifice, all of this martyrdom is all worth it because you are the only person that can be with this other person that is very abusive, because you're the only one that can take it. You're the only one that they trust, and hence you're the only one that can make it work. And you're also almost proud to be the only one that can withstand the levels of abuse that sometimes come from a codependent relationship with the wrong person, or a codependent friendship with the wrong person, with almost no resentment. In my experience, the resentment does come up eventually, because the reason why you are codependent is because you want the trade-off of the validation, of the praise, or the feeling of importance, and of the moral superiority. When you do all of your service and these things don't come back, you will start being resentful. So this is codependency for me. I hope you found this video informative. I'm hoping to do more on topics that are really close to my heart. So if you'd like to know when more are coming, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for bearing with me, and thank you very much for not getting flustered if you got to the end about all of my umming and erring, and maybe the fact that the video wasn't as flowy or entertaining as the next ones will definitely be. Okay guys, have a good one. Leave me a comment about what you heard here, and I'll see you all soon.